P&R with Adam R. Welcome to 3P&R. I'm your host, Adam R., and with me on this episode is Michael Ciesynski. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing, partner?
Good. Glad to have you on. I appreciate your time. We looking at your background, you're a retired homicide detective, yeah?
Yes, that's right. I'm a retired homicide cold case detective now.
So
I retired. I was a homicide detective for 22 years, and then after my 10 years in homicide, they invited me to join the cold case unit, and I said okay.
Look, there needs to be more of it, right? That the goal on this show eventually, because I've had some detectives I've spoken to. I had Cloyd Steiger on the show.
Cloyd was my partner.
Yeah. So, wow, that's great. So, I mean, I was talking to him about it. I'll talk to you about it. I want to get more detectives on the show talking about cold cases to give those light, right? To give them, it boils down to something someone might hear that might shed light on that case. You never know, especially in today's age.
That's correct. There's not many of us cold case detectives. We only had, we were lucky. We were fully funded, and we were what's called dedicated cold case detectives. That means it's all we worked was cold cases. That's it. And there's two of us, and then my partner retired, and then there was just me for years and years. And then when I was leaving, I was able to get another detective on board, but now he's by himself. And now all the homicides, across the country, it's a catastrophe what's going on with police departments. In fact, our police department, I was notified yesterday, they're going out and doing patrol work to augment patrol units because everybody in Seattle, guys all quit.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, that's probably a result of what happened during COVID, right?
No, a result of, all the crazy things, about police and, and
yeah,
the cops are the bad guys, which is always kind of, but that's not the topic.
I mean, there's good and bad people in every scenario, right? We're humans, regardless. So,
well, yeah, of course, and that's like what I try to explain to some people, and I'm an old timer. I was a policeman for 37 years. My father-in-law was a chief of police. I came from Chicago, and the cops have always been. And I'm not whining. The cops have always been the whipping boys, in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and 90s. Yeah. And so I always thought that this last go around is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's taking a toll. It's unfair.
I mean, in Chicago, my hometown, Chicago, there's 736 homicides a year. That's like Afghanistan and Iraq, the war combined. Just in Chicago. And then when I lived on the south side, then I became a policeman in Calumet City, Illinois. Now you go to the south suburbs in Chicago, that's, my man, is where it's bad.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll flee to Chicago instead of being in Calumet City and Riverdale and Dalton, those kind of places. Those places are bad.
How do they approach that? I mean, what can they do to change that?
Oh, well, it's never been. When homicides all dropped in the 90s, they dropped 25% nationally. And except for Chicago didn't miss one beat. They had the same amount of homicides that year, which I thought was like 550.
I mean, I would imagine it would take heavily investing into those neighborhoods, rebuilding, restructuring, developing proper relationships with the people who live there. I mean, it's tough.
They did all that, they tore down Cabrini Greens and the Robert Taylor homes, which were the worst housing projects in the United States. But, it has to do with, poverty, drug use, drug selling, my biggest point is they killed the cops killed very, very, very few people. I mean, very few. I mean, there's not even a percentage point of how many people that the cops kill nationally for how many murderers there are out there and how many policemen get killed. It's really amazing that more cops don't. I was a rarity and my partner, which you had on the air, Cloyd Steiger, which she always points out, I was involved in my whole career. I was involved in, I think, 4, maybe 5 shootings where I was, I got ambushed, was going to a call, whatever. And he wasn't involved in any of them. And most cops never, ever, shoot their gun. I mean, it's like 0.5% the people that are ever discharge a firearm in the line of duty. I just happened to be, I was from Chicago and different places, and I was worked in places. I worked patrol, and I worked in narcotics in the 80s, and which was, just a crazy time in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
Then I worked in robbery in the early 90s, and robbery is always, you ask any cop, any homicide detective, or any detective, and they say, which is the best job I ever had? And I was working in robbery, just cops and robbery. Then I got into homicide, and I was, I got involved in shootings there too.
I was going to ask you what got you involved in homicide, but hearing your resume lets me know that you're up for challenge, right? That's exactly what you look for, is challenge.
Yeah, and there's a natural progression, and the progression that before was you went to narcotics, and then from narcotics you went to robbery, and then from robbery, or you went like with Cloyd Steiger, who he went from patrol, the SAU, the sexual assault unit. And then you get training with violent crimes in those units, and then you progress, if you want to, to homicide, if you're lucky, and get the call. And Cloyd and I got the call at the same time. Cloyd was like a couple months before I did, and then we just kind of ended up working together. And you had Cloyd on the show, right?
Yeah. He's a go-getter. You could hear it in his voice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's a determined guy. You know what I mean? So
yes, and we share the same birthday. And
oh wow,
isn't that great? Yeah. So I'd always have to buy him a drink, and he'd always have to buy me a drink on our birthdays.
It was a partnership made in heaven.
Yeah, and then we'd have our little cocktail, and people would say, "Why are they doing this?" It's people. Secretaries walk by, "Oh, it's their birthday." Just have a drink. Whenever we whenever we solve the crime or homicide, we don't open up a drawer, and and we'd have a belt of whiskey or whatever it was, and then back to work.
Yeah, I watched this video that shocked me recently. With it was a highway patrolman who was shot on duty, and there's no doubt in that video that the person that shot him, that was his intention from start. There wasn't that wasn't a fight, flee or fight type thing. That was his intention. So it's tough to be a cop, period, right? You're talking about a job where you signed up to be in danger all the time, And I see these other videos, and look, I understand why some people pull their camera out. You want to protect yourself. I get that. And again, there are some bad cops out there, fact. But then there's these other people I see, they're intentionally going to police stations to record. They're calling it the First Amendment nonsense. That's great if you want to protect your First Amendments or whatever, but I feel like they're instigating a problem for video purpose and for likes on YouTube, etc. I don't agree with that at all.
That's all they're doing, And if something, and the cops are the first ones to tell you, if we had a bad apple, we didn't want to be around that guy,
Right.
Every guy was, was a thug or drug dealer or whatever, rapist, which they had all those guys. I was on a police department, all the type of guys like that. We happily to see them get arrested and put away, and
I agree.
By the way, we don't need that, but it's especially like in Seattle is when I laughed when I got to Seattle here because Seattle it's so squeaky clean over here, and we average only 50 homicides a year. Wow. And for a major metropolitan city, that is crazy. You get that's a month in Chicago.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's 3 weeks in Chicago. And in places like, Gary, Indiana, Detroit.
I live in Florida. Everything crazy happens here. Everything crazy happens here. You name it. Anywhere from homicide right up to aliens, ghosts. Everything here is nuts. So it's a beautiful place too. It's the weirdest part.
I know where you live in. I've got relatives in Clearwater and Largo.
Yeah. Those are beautiful areas, but the craziest nonsense happens there. So
I remember I was going to go when I was in Chicago, and I was going to I was gonna, I had ants in my pants. I had no, we had no kids. My wife and I were married and stuff. And I was already a cop, and knew I was always gonna end up moving. And it was getting close to Christmas. It was in 1981, something like that, right when you guys had the real big problems with the Cuban, or what do you call them, the Marito?
Oh yeah.
And so I called up Miami. Somehow, I don't know why I got the phone call, or I called up Miami-Dade, and they wanted me to come down there and test. And they were holding a seat for me, and don't worry, just come on down there. It was like another week or something. And then that week, I said, oh, okay. And I said, it sounds good. And then that week, Time Magazine came out, and the cover story was Trouble in Paradise. And they had the map of Florida on the cover of Time Magazine, and 3 of the cities there, and I forgot which cities were. I mean, Miami was one of them. I think Fort Lauderdale, and I forgot what the other one was. They led the nation in homicides, and 25% of the homicides were committed by machine gun.
Yeah,
I'm thinking,
I mean,
whoa!
Think about what you're saying. A machine gun,
Machine gun. Yeah, it was just, it was just crazy. But as a young cop, wow, how exciting. You go out there and you're working and stuff and all that kind of stuff. The problem is where you're going to live.
Yeah.
And it was, it was expensive, to get on the outskirts and stuff. But I always loved Florida. I thought, the people were friendly, and it's just, the sunshine. As I'm telling you this right now, it's been raining here in Seattle. I mean, winter came here, boom. And now it's cold and wet.
Yep.
And they'll stay.
That's the thing with Florida, and people don't realize this too. It is beautiful here, but in the 80s and 90s, every big city had the same dream. Let's go to Florida, start and have our family there, and have a better life. And so you had major cities like LA. I moved to Florida from Brooklyn, from New York. I
had that feeling listening to you say something. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of people moved here from these big cities, and like I was not a perfect kid. I was the opposite. Right. And as a kid, I remember my mom she didn't want me around certain kids. She thought they were a bad influence, not realizing it was me. Right. So, but yeah. I had that big city attitude, right? That I had that streetwise attitude. Now I just represent a huge percentage of the kids that moved here in the 80s and 90s. So you can imagine how crime would spread here, because the big city attitude came right alongside with it. And then obviously the proximity to Cuba and Mexico. Yeah, there's no doubt the insanity in South Florida. You know what I mean? It's undeniable.
Now, did you move to Tampa itself?
I moved to Palm Harbor, which is not far from Tampa. It's in the Tampa Bay area. Yeah. And for me, that was a culture shock, right? Because you go from New York, where you get buses every 5 seconds, video arcades walking distance, pizza places. Then you come here, and there's nothing. Yeah. I remember sitting on a bus stop, and it never came. I was shocked. So. Yeah.
Anything. Now, and when you lived in New York, and here I'm interviewing, did you live in New York proper, New York City?
I lived in Brooklyn and in Bensonhurst.
Okay.
Yeah. So right in the heart of the city, right by Red Hook, and it was it was always alive. Yeah, New York's a great place, from my memory. I went there, and I had to interview a serial murderer named Rodney Alcala, and who just died recently. Thank God, he's in hell burning. And I was working with a New York City homicide detective, first grade homicide detective, and great guy. And we both did the same amount of time. He was an African American. We both had the same amount of time on the job, like we were both 30-year veterans and stuff. And he took me around, and he didn't want me to walking around. I was staying in Manhattan, but then when they took me down to Brooklyn and stuff, and I said, I want to take the train back, the subway back. He said, no, Mike, I don't want to do that. I said, come on, man, I'm from Chicago. You guys, what is this? You guys are in New York. And he's laughing at me, but he was so worried. He called me up later. He said, yeah. And I was on the subway and stuff, and people gave me directions, and they're talking to me and asking me, and they were the friendliest. They were really the friendliest, nice people, especially the bartenders were too. I mean, they all kind of opened up to me and stuff and talked to me, and it was really cool. I was a little freaked, I got to admit, though, when I was standing in the subway, and I stayed as far away from those tracks as I could. Yeah, I mean, it's overwhelming.
Because of the volume. I'm going, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, the volume of people and traffic, it could be overwhelming. For me as a kid, it was normal. When I came to Florida, it was like, again, culture shock. It was so slow here. Like nothing was happening, And
yeah, but you stayed, didn't you?
yeah, well, I don't know if I could ever go anywhere else. You know what I mean? Because I've become so accustomed to this, to the weather, to the locations. You know, nostalgic reasons are attached now. So I don't know if I could ever go anywhere else. But
No, you're a young guy. You can, you'll go somewhere in Florida, right?
yeah, if I'm moving anywhere, it's down to Naples. That's my next stop. Yeah,
Naples is nice.
it's coming. That place is coming along. It's literally. It reminds me of what I guess. Well, here's what someone told me. It's the new LA is the way it's coming along. I don't know how true that is or not, but
my friend, one of my best friends, grew up in Chicago. Now he had a place in Florida and a place in Chicago. Now he's completely in Florida. He lives in you don't know the area called Juno Beach.
yeah, familiar with it.
Jupiter, Florida.
Jupiter, Florida. I was just talking about it on a podcast the other day because I had a paranormal guy on. He's actually a parapsychologist, right? He investigates the people who investigate ghosts. And I was telling him, Jupiter, Florida happens to be one of these little hotspots, this little area in there, this little neighborhood. So it's kind of crazy. So again, everything happens in Florida, everything. So I don't know why that is. Maybe aliens like the climate too. Who knows? But for you, you interviewed a serial killer. You told me earlier. What was that guy's name?
Yes. Well, I ended up interviewing. Well, the case we're talking about today is Dwayne Lee Harris, and Dwayne Lee Harris was the first serial killer charged in Seattle. People, that was in 1997. People always thought, no, there's all these other guys. Ted Bundy. I said, no, Ted Bundy was never charged in any crimes in Seattle. Oh, yes, yeah, and he was executed in Florida. Matter of fact.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, all the other ones, I said, no, in Seattle proper, this is the first one. And I was working just get regular call out. And then I eventually after I was in a cold case, and then I ended up working, if you ever work a serial murder case, it's a big, big deal. I never even dreamed I'd work a serial murder case. I just want to work, I get called out, go out to my regular drug type cases and that kind of stuff. And I ended up working 7 serial murder cases, which, someone said that's like a record or something like that.
That is a big number, man. That's a total take too.
Oh yeah, but it was just, it was because of DNA and all that thing. It wasn't because I was some great detective.
Well, you got to understand. I told Cloyd this too when I spoke to him. I didn't realize. I was, leading up to Cloyd, I did a little research about serial killers. I didn't realize how many are active at any one time. It's kind of crazy.
It is.
Very, I only know the ones I've heard of from, the big names, right? I didn't realize how many are going. And then I realized why. Because if you're in the news with it, you're keeping the serial killer a step ahead. And on top of which causing hysteria. So
and then we got so much. Then when DNA came around, that was the game changer. And that's especially in my case. I'm solving cases from the 60s and 70s, and but one I'll tell you, I'll jump ahead, but serial killers are sociopaths, and these guys I'm interviewing, these guys, they've been in prison for 25, 30 years, and of course I started interviewing them, and I said, I want to talk to you about this case, and well, that's a long time ago. I don't remember anything about that, And I'd call BS on it right away. I said, you remember everything about it, and I know you do. Right? And then they kind of hang their heads, and then when I told them what I was going to do with them, I was going to take them out of the prison. I was going to put them in the county jail, and we'll go from there. And then they would confess, and because they're already doing life, and they don't want their lives turned upside down by this young homicide detective, And but then they would tell me the color of the drapes, where they cut the cord from to tie the girls up, where they got the knife, which dresser drawer, or which kitchen drawer, the color of the dress the girl was wearing. This stuff like from 30 years later, and that's all the serial killers do is they remember every single thing. That's all they do is they replay it in their head over and over again, and they try to get better at their trait. They're bringing tape with them, and or making sure no one's around, and but they all think they're smart. Everyone I interviewed, they always thought they're smarter than me. And the case we're talking about now, Chili Willie, Dwayne Lee Harris, and AKA Chili Willie, he always thought he was such a brainiac, and he had us going for a little while. Myself and Cloyd Steiger, and we were working the case, but it wasn't the case. We got those guys.
Yeah, I mean, Since Cloyd, I've read some stuff. I got more involved. So I'm going to be reaching out more again to other detectives that want to speak about cases that need light. And yeah, you're right. The DNA was a game changer. And it makes me wonder if we advance with our technology to, investigate. I wonder if serial killers are savvy enough to make adjustments to what they do.
I think they will be. I don't believe we have as many serial killers anymore because we put so many of them away, and because of DNA, and things kind of slowed up. And we were like in my office, all we would do is we reviewed all of the cases that were females were victims because we had a higher chance of solvability because of DNA, and from someone using the strangulation and our DNA from semen. So that gave us a better chance. And it's like one of the reasons why we solved so many. That's because so many cases were solved across the country. But we're victims were usually females. Now, it doesn't mean we're going to solve, there's really hard to get DNA like off of, shell casings and other things. But
in assault cases, it makes it a little easier, right?
Oh, yeah. When there's assault and, and there's when there's a sexual assault, not saying that you cannot get, DNA from different things, but I'm just saying it's just a little bit easier, especially the cases that are, 30, 40 years old. Well, we solved so many cases across the country in the 2000s and stuff because of DNA, and things kind of slowed up on all those old cases. But it's also the good work of the police officers and detectives that did process these crime scenes, in my case, it was in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they were just so thorough. And you read the reports, and they were really, and these guys were really, really good. Some of the terminology is a little bit raw, and they're saying, oh yeah, this guy here, he was a known homosexual, and I knew it, and this guy here, this Negro male, was known to go with white women or things like that. And you read it and you're going, Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
what these things report. Well, it was just a norm back then. It was, that's just what they did.
Yeah, the verbiage must be tough from that generation to this one, right?
Yeah. But like I said, you're looking at the reports and stuff. And you got to remember, most people don't even know what the hell carbon paper is. It's
my God, I forgot about carbon paper.
Oh yeah, all those type of things, and the way the typewriters and some of the stuff was, written out in pen and stuff and cursive and stuff. And like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is they all did really, really good work. And the case that we're talking about here now is Chili Willie. I'll jump back to that. We first got called out there in 1997 and to a place called the Jungle. It was just a green belt next to the city of Seattle. And we called it Jungle because the only people that would be up there are transients and some people that would be, drinking and stuff. And the reason the transients were there is because, like in most cities, transients that have mental conditions cannot be down in the city dealing with other thugs because they'd be getting, they did them stabbing the guys to death. They can't be messed with. They have to, they have mental issues. They got to be by themselves. And so that's what the Jungle was like.
Huh.
And it was just,
Well, for you as a detective, when you went out to that place, knowing that's got to put like the hair in your neck up a little bit, right?
Oh yeah. You're always looking around there and stuff, and it's it's right downtown Seattle, so it's loud. I mean, and in fact, our suspect in this case, Chili Willie. Later, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but jumping around and why would you bring the victims up here? Or why would you look for someone up here? He goes, well, he used to call me Mikey Mike. That was his pet name.
Wow.
Mikey Mike, I tell you why. You know what it was like up there. No one could hear you scream. Then he'd laugh. Ah.
Holy shit.
I'd be like, holy smokes. No. So I'll back up now. So we get called out to this place and to the jungle, and there's a girl, and she's gagged, and she had ligature around her neck, and her hands were tied, and her feet were tied, and but they're loosely tied. So if you tie somebody up, it's like handcuffing somebody, right?
Right.
The wrists are together, right? Not, but her wrists are like 6 to 10 inches apart. Her hands apart. So it's like, why would you tie somebody up? Make it easier to carry, or also when you tie somebody up, you usually tie them behind her back or you handcuff them. And her legs were the same way. They were tied up with her shoelaces, and her shoes were on her feet. Looking at that, saying, well, how would you get her shoelaces out of her shoes without taking the shoes off, and like she wouldn't kick or something like that. So that looked staged to me. So once again, I was a young detective at the time, and I'm around these senior detectives now. Most of them are dead now. Around these senior detectives, and so when I'm saying a couple of things, this doesn't look right. This looks like this, and the old grizzly sergeant's kind of looking at me like, yeah, what the hell do you know? And I'm telling guys I like certain pieces of evidence I'd like to be collected. And they're kind of like, what do I need anymore? What's this young guy telling me to do? Because there was a can of beer, a beer can that was impaled on halfway up a tree. Halfway up a tree, I mean, 5 feet up from the bottom.
Right.
Big pile of beer cans they're drinking. And somebody impaled this beer can on the street. So I just kind of looked at it and said, I'd like to take a picture of that too. And as this, you're not doing the scene, but you're the case detective. You got a little bit of, you could say, I want this, I want that, But when you're young guys, like Cloyd Steiger and I were, you ask nicely, hey, could you guys mind? Would you do this, And so that's how that case went. And I just came back from a seminar about serial murders. I mean, that afternoon I was listening to guys talk about, this case, the presentation was put on by the prosecutor's office about serial murders. It was very interesting. But thinking, when am I ever going to work a serial murder case? And so we worked in this case, and then we worked. So then we identify the victim. I go to her house, her apartment. She was a school teacher at one point, then fell into drugs and alcohol. She was staying with this gentleman who, when I showed him the picture of his girlfriend, he said, it doesn't surprise me a bit. No, it doesn't surprise me a bit. She'd come in here, she'd be gone for a week and stuff. And she'd be sleeping around just, for drugs and that type of stuff. And so we worked the case for months and months and months. And then another girl came up dead. And Antoinette Jones was her name. And she was found right next, you can look from that crime scene and see the other crime scene, less than a half a mile away. But she was half skeletonized. And in fact, Cloyd Steiger, I don't know if you talked to Cloyd, he was talking about this, but they're processing the crime scene, and all of a sudden, boom, out jumps a rat from her chest, cavity, and runs across these guys' feet. They're like, whoa, 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 whoa. And really, really, really nasty.
Well, that gave me chills even hearing that.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was just like, and I said, yeah, God, I always would have done. Had a camera of you guys all jumping around. All these guys were lightweights, and but she was there that long, and so it's partially skeletonized. That's how come. So so other detectives were working that case, and then again, you look a little bit closer at the skeletonized, and she had a gag in her mouth. Into the skeleton, and we know when you look at a skeleton, it has a gag in the mouth. Its mouth looks like it's gaping. It's really, really nasty.
Right.
And there was one around the throat, and then the hands are tied also with shoelaces. I think we got a serial murderer. Well, the other detectives really didn't want to hear that. More the senior detectives, not say, oh, you guys are full of baloney. You guys don't know what you're talking about, young guys. Yeah, but look at this, look at that. And then Cloyd ended up getting a case right before they found it, but we didn't really tie that together right away because the girl was not tied up, and she had her throat cut, and then she had some stab wounds to her chest and to her buttocks area also. which means somebody had some time when they're doing that kind of stabbing. And but we had a blood trace, so the suspect got cut during the assault, during the murder. So now we had these 3 people and stuff, and then all of a sudden we get a phone call. And I get a phone call from the King County Jail. There's this guy in jail, and his name, he said, yeah, my name's Dwayne Lee Harris, and he goes, I know who killed that girl next to I-90 in the wooded area, and I ain't seen the body and the person who killed her. I said, oh yeah, really? Yeah. He goes, yeah. He goes, I'll tell you something you don't know. With that, something that you know and nobody else knows. You never recovered her purse or identification, did you? I know where he put it, and I can take you to it. I said, oh, okay. Well, where is he? He goes, no. You got to get me out of here first, man. He was in there for robbery. You got to get me out, and I'll help you with the case. I had, how many guys I had to tell me that, help me out, and I'll help you solve some crimes, Get me out of here, because I'm looking like at 4 years or 5 years. Yeah, that's not going to be happening, brother. And so, but he had my attention when he told us about the purse, So we ended up taking him out of jail, me and another detective, and we brought him up to the jungle, and we had a waist chain on him. We had, leg irons on him, thinking, oh, you have somebody waiting up for us up here, and stuff. So we're heads are on a kind of swivel. But he positioned the body pretty good. He was real close to where it was. Once again, this is like 4 months afterwards. And the body was this way, the head was this way, the feet were facing that way and stuff, and her mouth, he put his hands like in his mouth and pulled, her face was gaping and stuff,
That's a lot of detail.
Oh yeah, he's going to, I'm thinking, this dude was there.
I mean, did that put him on the radar for you at that moment?
Oh man, yeah, he's out. He's what we got thinking about this guy. He keeps putting it on to some other guy. I'm thinking, well, but he'd call us up if he's the guy, to do this thing. And then, so we put him back in there and put him in the jail. We end up taking him out every day. And then he brings us by the Antoinette Jones case, and he says, "Yeah, this girl was she was also killed up here too." And he's telling us where she's at and stuff. And damn, man, he's got that right. So we would take this guy out of jail every single day. Every day we were taking him out of jail and bringing him with us and going on these little things. And he keeps saying, yeah, it's Mike or Mark Smith, this one guy. And he describes the guy. Well, the description actually matches him. The more he talks, and so it's like, oh, it sucks, And this dude he's a big dude, Dwayne Lee Harris is a big guy, 6'1", 6'2", something like that, tough, man.
Yeah.
Tough dude, a couple of teardrop tattoos and that. And he never wanted to talk about any gangbanging murders or nothing like that. But he was a tough guy. And I'm having lunch with him every day, every single day we're taking him out. Then I have to drive him back to the county jail. Not the county jail that was next to my office, the one that was the next city over. And then one day he's going to take us out to go show some other murders. And we got him sitting in a room, He said, give me one of them cappuccinos, Mikey. Mike, he's calling me Mikey. Mikey, give me one of them cappuccinos. All right, yeah, we get him that. And I got him some McDonald's, something like that. And we got a magazine. He was happy as a clam. Got a cigarette, going, I'm all good. And I come back in there. I'm telling him we're going to get some, dogs that go search this one area he's talking about. There are some bodies over here. And he gives us little, that half time we're thinking it's bullshit. And maybe this is pretty good. And I come walking back in there and he goes, Mikey, Mike. He goes, I'm tired, man. I'm tired of killing. He goes, I killed those 2 girls. And I also killed that bitch in the stairwell. And I'll tell you all about it. I said, okay, hold on 1 minute. I walk out. I tell my partner, who's now deceased, and I said, hey, call Cloyd up. Cloyd said, go getting a physical or something. This guy just confessed to all the murders, and I'm taking a statement from now. And my partner says, are you, lying to me or teasing me or whatever? And he used different.
You can speak freely, by the way. You don't have to. There's no censor. I don't want a program director over my shoulder. You know what I mean? Okay,
yeah. You shitting me? Yeah. I said, no. And my partner did. Yeah, he's from New York. He goes, you Boston. Are you shitting me? I said, no. You just confessed. And I spelled you can call the dogs off too. We won't be in. And so this guy, he confesses to them, and then he takes out to show us. He wants to play. He wants to play. Let's go on a field trip all the time. And we end up going out with this guy for like 3 weeks straight. Then it was getting a little bit scary, thinking that he's going to get away or something. So we finally had a charge him, put him in the county jail next to us. And then we had it was just bizarre. I mean, the guy, he wanted to go to trial. Then he was performing in trial. He didn't like the judge. He was being nasty with one of the female prosecutors, and they had to put him in a Hannibal Lecter chair. Which
the constraints,
restraints, and sits back. Then they had to put him in a private room with an attorney and 2 guards. And I'm walking, during recess, we're walking by with the jurors, and he's yelling through the door, "Jurors, I'm in here, help me!" I mean, it was a cluster, man.
He manipulated that entire situation the best he could.
Oh, yeah. I'm at home watching. All of a sudden, there he is on news. He's giving these live interviews. I'm not saying I'm guilty. I'm not saying I'm not guilty. I'm not saying that there's, if you found 3 bodies, you might find 30 more bodies.
Wow.
That's how the guy was talking. He was rather inflating a few numbers. Yeah. And but we worked all those cases, and it was good, very good police work. It ruffled some feathers because they took one of the cases away from the other detectives and gave it to us. Why are we giving these young guys detectives? And the bosses, the B, just said no. They're running with us. They think they liked the way we were doing things, and the guy was cooperating. So that's why I'd been upset if they would have took the case away from me. So next so that's how we ended up working the first serial murder case charge in Seattle, and it was. The trial went. It was a crazy trial, and stacked with people and photographers and all this, and he ended up getting 94 years in the prison.
Jeez.
And then when I retired 4 years ago, my last day I had to go to one of the prisons and to interview somebody or something. I said, as long as I'm here, I'm going to see Chili. And they bring him out. Now he's 50 pounds heavier. And he's got his big glasses on. He's kind of looking. He always called me Mikey. I was like, they just tease us because we got along so well. He liked me. He didn't like Cloyd too much. He goes, "Yeah, where's your buddy? Where's your buddy Stager at?" I said, Dr. Stager couldn't make it, but he sends his love to you, Chili. Yeah, I'll bet he did. And he's looking at me and he goes, I always wear a suit and a sweater. Usual.
Right.
We always dress real nice in homicide. And he's looking at me and he says, "Yeah, you always did dress nice. I used to dress nice all the time. I always had a suit and sweater and tie like you got on," which is completely bullshit. He had army fatigues on. He was transient half the time and he'd find places to crash. And otherwise he'd outstay his welcome all the time.
Jesus, man. Anything to his benefit, it sounds like, right? If he could get 5 minutes manipulated in his favor, he's gonna do it.
That's all he has. And so they stuck him in prison. So he's around. They moved him around a couple of times, but like I say, I think he's 59 years old now, and thank goodness he's going to die in prison. Any relatives, anybody he makes friends with or communicate with, then he burns that bridge, saying something crazy to them, threatening people and stuff.
What about there's like these people, though, these women that write these serial killers, and for whatever bizarre reason, they become involved with them. I can't understand that.
Well, they're allowed to get the mail and stuff, and now all of a sudden they're showing this person, they're showing they're con men, and they're showing, I'll give you all the affection, how you doing, you look beautiful. Can you send me another picture of yourself and blah, blah, blah. Now, I wish I could do this. I don't have the money to do it now, so they'll put money on their accounts and all that kind of stuff.
I watched that Night Stalker on, what was that? Netflix? Night Stalker?
Oh, yeah.
That freak, I couldn't believe what I was seeing in that courtroom. He had fans. This guy was murdering people, and he had fans in the courtroom with no regard for the families. I was blown away when I saw that. And that guy speaks evil. Like, I don't know a lot about serial killers, but the look in that guy's face speaks evil. Where on the flip side of the coin, I watched this documentary about Ted Bundy, and that guy seemed very charismatic, very outgoing. He could be a next door neighbor, and you would almost not know what he is. You know, it's kind of a strange night and day with those two.
Yeah, Ted Bundy, you know, being a Seattle guy, and there's the crime writer Ann Rule, who passed away in 2015, and she was like, you know, the #1 crime writer in the United States for like 15 years. And she worked, the book that she wrote was called Stranger Beside Me, about when she stayed work at the crisis clinic, her and Ted Bundy. Ted was working right next to her.
Oh, my God.
She said, there's no doubt in my mind that Ted saved lives. You know, people calling up, you know, they're depressed and stuff, and he had the gift of gab. And he would walk Ann out to her car when she's driving home at night. Okay, and he'd go and take it, you know, be safe and stuff. Then he'd go back inside there. And then, but such sociopath that he was, here he'd be saving lives. He'd talk to him on the phone. He would go in there, and he would take the phone off the hook and just go there and sleep.
That's crazy, man.
So these people are calling up. They're desperate. You know, they're getting a busy signal. You know, that's just a classic. I mean, that's just a classic sociopath.
Honestly, and you know, and then the guy escapes from jail multiple times. Like, what the fuck? He was an intelligent guy. That's the scariest part. He was really smart.
Oh, yeah. He was a smart, manipulative person, and I knew a couple of people that I interviewed a couple of people that knew him, and it just, you know, they're interviewing these people, interviewing as many serial killers that I have, and that many other detectives have. You learn their traits pretty good, and they're very good. You know, listen to their conversations. You know, and they're calling relatives. They're manipulators. They just manipulate. No matter if they're in jail for 35, 40 years, and they're always telling everybody, you know, yeah. You know, I didn't do it. You know, I took the beef for somebody else or this or that. They have all these, you know, excuses and stuff. Of course, when I got them alone and stuff, I got full confessions from them, and it doesn't do me any good by going telling their relatives, guess what, I decided just to plead guilty to that crime, because I was just to help those guys out. Oh yeah, sure you will.
Was there any particular one you came across that just creeped you out to the point you wanted nothing to do with them?
Well, all of them really. While you're with all these guys, and you listen to them, a lot of times you're just talking. It's just like they're talking just like business, and now they're in prison for 30 years, and you know they're like counselors for the other guys, you know. And
that's crazy.
You know, like the big uncle. But I ended up convicting 7 serial murders. I investigated, I think 11. I think that's what I remember watching. I interviewed a lot of these guys. I never got to charge a couple of guys, because one of the things I did learn is that you think you have, this is a unique homicide. Well, no, it's kind of similar to this other homicide, the way they tired up, positioning the bodies and all that kind of stuff. And when everybody goes to court on a murder case, they don't send losers the case. I mean, they don't to court. I mean, if it's 50-50, we'll get this guy convicted. No, you don't.
Yeah, you got to go there.
Prosecuting those cases. You're prosecuting cases that are almost slam dunks. They don't want no doubts about it. And in most cases, that's usually most in any case. You're saying someone that you're prosecuting. You say, let's charge this guy. You got ample enough. You got DNA. You got witness statements. You got past criminal history. You got tape recordings. You're lined up, and and that's what I had on my cases. And then I ended up getting some DNA on a lot of the cases, or them whatever material that they use, why they're cinching their throats and stuff. And these guys that they would, they'd rape the women also. And sometimes, like in Chile never raped her. That's what he told me when I went to see him. He said, "Yeah, you said I raped him. And it was nothing about sex. It was just about killing." And I said, "Yeah, you're right about that." He goes, them bitches, then they gave it up to me, and And yes, they did. They did it for, they wanted the cocaine. That's what they all wanted. They wanted the cocaine that he'd give cocaine, and one was with heroin also. And then he just decided, no, now he's going to kill him.
So that's the thing. That's a common trait. They prey on the weakness of these. So not saying
how they get there, alcohol or drugs and stuff, and they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable victims. Most on both sides of the coin, men and women, they're very, very vulnerable.
God, I hear that, and I think it sounds like fishing for them. They're using bait.
Yeah, they see him. There's this one girl who got away, and he was going to rape her, and he was in a house, an apartment, and they're drinking, Colt 45 and stuff, and had some drugs, and all of a sudden he decides he's going to rape this girl, and he starts, he beats there's a guy there whose apartment was. He beats that guy up, ties the guy up after he had her undress, and she was able to run out of the house and runs away, and so she got away, named him. This is the guy who did it. Of course, she's not going to prosecute. She's in the wind because she was a prostitute. 15-year-old would call them crack whores and just do anything for crack. Well, now it's 5 years later or something, and I end up having her as a witness in another homicide. And I'm talking to her. I take her, sit her down in a hotel. We're getting her a hotel room because she's witnessed this homicide. We don't want her in the wind again. And she's telling me, I said, "Oh, it must have been, you got to, get off the streets. You got to stop doing this kind of stuff. You're not dead." She goes, "Oh, I got close to getting killed a couple of times." She goes, "Matter of fact," she pulls her skinny legs on the corner of the table, and she goes, "See these shoes? The first times I wore these shoes since that day." And she goes on to tell us the story about how this guy beat the other guy up, was going to rape her, and she ran out of the house stark naked. And she goes, "Yeah, the guy's name was Chilly Willie." Now listen, this is during the whole time that we're interviewing Chilly. This is during that same time. So then I knew we had that guy. And she was scared. She was so scared of him. And when I talked to him about her, when we were going to confession, he would get into a trance-like state. When we talked about like Floyd Price, he'd be in the back of the car and he'd be talking about when he killed somebody. And then all of a sudden his voice would get deep. And he was wearing a waist chain. I could see his hands. He's manipulating his hands like he's throttling someone's neck. And she said, "I can't do this. I got children." I said, "You tell that to God." And they seen him squeezing. And he is just, and that's how he was with her. He goes, "I wanted to get her. I'd see her walking down the street. I said, I'm going to get her one day. I'm going to get back there. I'm going to get that little bitch who got away. I'm going to kill her." And it's like, holy smoke. This girl was so scared. And she was a street prostitute. And so she had a lot of issues, a lot of scary times. But nothing was as scary to her as Chilly Willie was.
Yeah, that. I can only imagine. That guy sounds like by described and what he's saying, it's almost like he becomes possessed at that moment, right? Something takes over.
That's good. That's a good description.
Yeah, because it seems like their personality splits between who they are as a predator versus who they are as just an individual, right? When you're seeing him in prison, he's like, "Hey, Mikey, Mike," and then he's on the street, he sees her, and something in his brain it clicks, and it's predator time. He alters his state. Oh,
he'd call me up, and one time it was going to be a weekend. This one we were taking him out, and he's calling me up, and it was a holiday, Memorial Day or Labor Day or something. And I'm listening to my voice message from home, and it says, "Hey, Mikey, Mike, this is Chilly. Yeah, you're probably off for the holidays, so I'll probably see you Monday or Tuesday, okay? And make sure you have a nice holiday." So I play it again, and I had my wife listen to it. And I look at my wife and I go, "When was the last time a serial killer told you to have a nice holiday?"
Honestly.
"Erase that thing. That thing is so creepy."
Yeah, my God, man. And then you have him in that moment where you're talking about the girl and the way his voice changes. Like, that's absolutely, it sounds like possession. It's crazy to hear. And then you got to wonder how many, look at Ted Bundy, the way he acted in public. He was very outgoing, outspoken, smiles, but that's a mask he's wearing, Yeah,
and that's how Chilly was like that also. Like a lot of it. They're, very charismatic, and stuff. a lot of them were not, like Ted Bundy was so unique because he was very highly educated. Most of you guys are not highly educated guys, or maybe got some high school, or maybe were in the military or something like that. But they could have, they could hold on to jobs. Like Chili couldn't hold on to a job right like that because he was a druggie, but he knew how to. He had the gift to gab, and he also used drugs as kind of a crutch, for he can lure people in there by promising them drugs and stuff, and he was a tough dude. I mean, he was a really, really tough guy. We were talking one day, who knows, it was some macho stuff, and he and I are sitting in the coffee room or something, and I give him his food, and I said, I don't know how I came up with it. I said, man, like the guys you used to dealing with, Chili. He goes, I know that, and I ain't like the guys you used to dealing with either. And so it was this little macho thing, and I just kind of laughed at it. I said, and I'm thinking about, I wouldn't be mixing up with you. I just put a couple holes in you, buddy.
Yeah, man. The guy's like a sociopathic narcissist, right? That's crazy.
Yeah, and all he thought about was, like I said, when he was in jail. He's in prison now, but while he was in prison, they put him in I was talking to the guards there, one of the investigators, and said, but Chili got in, he get in trouble, he get him moved around. He said, yeah, he was in his, they had a roommate with him, and the roommate, took his coffee or something like that, and so Chili beat the guy almost to death,
Like, yeah, I mean, that's
well, the guy stole his coffee,
That's the switch though for him, right? That's where he switched from Buddy to Predator. I mean,
yeah, and but so it'd be interesting to see. Once again, I say I retired 4 years ago. I think was in my last day on the job. I went seen him, and I seen another guy who I put away for murder. But I went to that prison, and I said, yeah, it's the last time. I had to go to prisons all the time. And we, prisons aren't as bad as county jails. County jails, they stink to transit, they're loud and stuff. Prisons, the guys got jobs. It's also very, very clean because sometimes they're cleaning like the same room like 3 times a day, But it's still, jails and prisons are, they're bad places for
anyone.
They're bad for regular people like us when we go there because nobody wants these people caged, and thank God they are caged. I mean, thank goodness. These are the worst people in the world. But you're still, it has a bad, creepy feeling about it.
His behavior. Listen, I live with a serial killer. It's a cat, and this is. Let me tell you why I say this. That same little animal will look at you all cuddly and snuggle, and then if something moves, it's murder time. Like that same way with that guy when he was talking to you normally, heard about the girl, he swapped voices and his attitude changed. The cat's the same way. It'll sit there and look cute, and if it sees something move, it's going to kill it. Period. It has no concern for otherwise.
I know exactly what you're saying about it. My cat's like that. He's looking out the window,
and
all of a sudden, you see the hair stand up, and you see his head bow a little bit, and the eyes just are locked.
Yeah, they're psychopaths, right? They're like that same thing, that sociopathic. They're sitting there 1 second, they're looking cute. The next minute, a lizard will run it, and like you can see the fangs ready. So it's crazy. And so, out of all these cases you worked, and you have your book, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that into the description. By the way, I want to link that up.
Thank you.
The cold cases. Now, I guess before we close, we'll talk about cold cases for you.
Okay.
I feel like for you, that would be tougher than the serial killer because, there's a lot of people, families that depend on you, right? For closure.
Yes. I have become friends with, very close friends with a lot of family members of victims on cases that I've worked. And, it's some of them are, very, very tragic. Some of them were where the victims were, they really didn't have that much family, because they were prostitutes. They left home for, they're always in trouble or did prison terms and all that type of stuff. And they're throwaways, throwaway people, and that's what that's the way they live their life. So I'm thinking, what would make any, like with Chili Willie, what would any woman go with this guy for?
Right.
It was the drugs. And like I said, one of the things I was talking to somebody else about, I was saying about women. They have these great defense mechanisms and stuff, and they can sense danger, because you and I, we walk out at night, we walk to the parking lot to get in our car. It's no big, we're just walking to our car.
Yeah.
Woman, she has her head's on a swivel, It's like a wolf, smelling the air and stuff, and they're protective of their children. For us, we just go walking. Women aren't like that. And many times I had women tell me, whatever the case may be, Joe would come over to our house, and I tell my husband, I never want to be left alone with that guy. And the husband would say, why? He wouldn't know. She goes, I never want to be left alone with that guy. And they would just get this feeling about the guy. And of course, the guy was a murderer, and that we find out later. And so, but they would just have this feeling, the guy wouldn't hit on him or nothing. Sometimes wouldn't even look at the girl.
Yeah.
But they just got this feeling, this animal instinct that it's bad news.
Cloyd and I discuss this too. I'm reaching out to more detectives. I want to reach out to more departments that have cold case. Anyone that works a cold case. It's these people. I swear to God, when I say this, man, these at-home sleuths, these at-home detectives, mostly the women, are sharp, and they'll listen. Yeah. They'll even listen to a podcast like this or some show, and they'll put something together that typically maybe they know something about it that they didn't realize in the beginning, some small detail, and they'll put it together in a heartbeat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really want to so again, I'm going to be reaching out to more detectives, more departments, and, get the cold cases on the show, because look, any information is better than no information, right?
Exactly.
And even even when I talk to the UFO people and the paranormals, and even my health and wellness, when I talk about that, I have this, my personal belief is no information is bad for you. You just got to know how to filter right.
That's right. And plus it's for your audience too, right?
Yeah.
What people believe in all different types of things, and it's psychics and all that. And I had an aunt who was like that. She could, and she would write down a few things, it's like, holy
yeah, like the intuition of some people. So that's what I'm saying with the cold cases. Yeah. I say this because from childhood, a friend, someone I knew was murdered, and I never heard a word about it again, ever. And I didn't even think about it until probably about 5 years ago when I ran into an old friend of mine. I was like, oh yeah. And it made me feel bad. Like, wow, this guy was killed and no one spoke about it. No one even get it. Like his life didn't matter. And it made me feel bad, And when I started doing the podcast, I initially was going to do this for all the mysterious stuff and health and wellness and other. And then I thought to myself, I really need to speak about these cold cases, because it might, again, you never know who's going to listen. You never know who's going to contribute. And it takes one person to have a light bulb go off and think, whoa, they can make that whole thing turn around.
Boom. Just like that. It is.
Or even missing person cases. I mean, I'm not going to, anything like that could help bring some kind of closure to anyone.
Yeah. When you look at the missing person cases and stuff, that's real crazy too. And, do you know who Rodney Akala is? You should, look up Rodney Akala. He just died in prison, and he was all over the country, killing women. And I think he killed maybe one or two boys too. Because he told me, "Oh yeah, I think I'm just 5% gay," and he was just this nasty guy. He was a photographer, and he would take entice women, and he had the gift of gab and take pictures of them. So they had 50 or 60 of these pictures of these women. We're trying to identify who these women are and stuff, and most of them are all victims that we met. And a couple of them, I met one who was not a victim of his. She lived, and she just met him. She goes, "Oh yeah, he had the gift of gab and stuff." And he rented a storage unit here in Seattle, and we had 2 girls murdered within a mile of that, and one of them fit his profile exactly. And I interviewed him in San Quentin, and which was that was rather bizarre. And then I interviewed him at Rikers Island, and I went to New York.
I'm finding a pattern in that too. The more I hear about these guys, they're definitely con artists, no question. They get, a lot of them have the gift of gab, and they just or gift of gab or drugs, or they prey on people with need.
Yeah, and Alcala, he had the thing, the vanity, you know, because he was a photographer and stuff, you know. Those photographers, you know, sometimes those guys too, you know, that's they look for a way to get in.
Yeah, you're right. Because if he's there with a camera, he seems like he has a purpose someplace.
Yeah, right. And plus, they're going to take a picture of me, you know, and they're going to make me look beautiful. Yeah, let's go. Let's just do a photo shoot of you know. It's about costume, you can get the pictures and stuff. You know, okay. And it's spooky. I mean, as a homicide detective, and you may get in them because people you have to interview all the time. Is I would drive home at night and working some crazy case all the time. And I'd see some, you know, young girl walking down the street, you know, in my neighborhood sometimes. And I'm looking around thinking, yeah, well, it's getting dark. I hope, you know, you're going to hook up with a friend or something. So like you get scared, you know, especially when you have kids, you know. And my kids are adults now, but back then you're just thinking, you know, I don't like anybody walking by themselves, you know, with these complete jackals around, you know.
Yeah.
They're just nasty, you know. And, you know, if it's a male or a female, you know, oh, geez, you just get spooked.
It's you know, if you listen to some of the other podcasts where I talk to people from the paranormal, the UFO world, while they're off looking for these, you know, supernatural things, I always tell them the most dangerous thing around you is going to be the people, you know. Mm-hmm. So it's fact, you know. You never. When was the last time you were a cop? You got a call in because someone was murdered by a Yeti. That's never happened, you know. So it's always a person. That's the biggest monster that we know of, and that's, you know, that's the truth. And it's sad to say it, you know. There's a lot of factors for me, like even the fact that, you know, I say this a lot too. Like we're trying to evolve as a species, as a people, and we can't do that. Like, I'm shocked that we're even still racist. That blows me away that that's even possible. Yeah. You know.
I know times have changed, and it's just crazy. You know, the world is crazy and keeps getting crazier by the day. It seems like. So, you know, what's, you know, this whole the whole, it's almost like the plague going around now. You know, they're walking around, everybody wearing masks, and do you have your mask with you? My wife says, I said, no. Sure, I got it.
It's nuts, man. Like I have this creed I live by. I say it on every episode. I mean, if you want a religion, humanity. If you want a race, human. If you want a place of origin, Earth. It's real simple, you know. The rest of it can just fall in place. It's nuts to have these kind of divisions between people, you know, especially for detectives. I wonder, that's got to definitely play a role, especially in Chicago. If you're a detective and you're in a gang related neighborhood, you're trying to gather information on a homicide, no one's talking to you.
No one's talking. Yeah, that really hurts, you know. Because, you know, even when you're talking to victims, you know, families a lot of times down, we ain't talking. You know, then you're talking to the mom or a sister or somebody and stuff, and all of a sudden now they still change. Now they want somebody, you know, to solve the case. You know, I need someone to talk to me about it. I had the same issue, you know, at times, and some kids, you know, there were kids at the time when I handled a cold case, and now they're adults, and you know, we don't really like talking to the police. I said, okay, well, I'm just here to solve your sister's, your mother's, you know, death, and this is what I have, and blah, 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 and just talking to them and stuff, and this is what I'm looking for. And I can always tell people, it didn't make any difference to me if they're white, black, Hispanic, Chinese. I just want to put the murderers away. That's all I'm here for. I don't, all I want to do is put the bad guy away.
At the end of the day, a loved one was killed, no matter whom it was or what it was. Yes. A loved one was killed, you know?
And anybody, I don't care, like I said, in my cases, a lot of times, you know, they're, you know, transient drug using people, but it's still with somebody's father, brother, son.
Yeah. You know, I look at everyone, like every person I look at in life, I always think about, you know, in their childhood. You think of everyone as a child. Everyone played with toys. Everyone had joy. Unfortunately, the pressures of life either made or break you, but the point is someone started somewhere from youth. And it's all a life. It's all a human life. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm really big on, I'm going to reach out to more detectives and agencies and get some more, you know, missing persons, cold cases, or even any case that they want to discuss. They have more light shed on it. It can't hurt.
I'll look down at it. If I know any of the guys, I'll send some guys your way.
Yeah. I mean, look, whatever can help, man. Because at the end of the day, if you're not putting it out there, you're not going to know. Nothing's going to come of it, right?
Right.
And it takes, like, I swear to you when I say this, like, my aunt, for example, will watch these shows and have the whole show figured out right in the beginning, right? apply that to her listening to some show. You never know. Like, you never know. Or that person that hears a show to hear the case, something rings a bell at them, and then, bling, something went off. It may not be the lead that gets it, but it's something.
Now, how many people, how many viewers do you have on your show? Do you have a lot?
It's starting. I just started this. This show's almost 2 months old. I have not advertised it at all yet. And it's getting traction. It is. Good. It's getting a lot of traction. I'm going to start advertising here soon. But before I did, I wanted to establish a good array of I didn't want to have it one theme. So I wanted to have variety before I started heavy advertising.
Good.
Good. Yeah, because if you get, I'm guilty of it. You get on there, you listen to the show, like, I'm not really interested in the subject, and you're gone. You never go back. I figured if I make enough variety and then I can advertise it, and then in the meantime, I'm developing a network. Whether it be in the paranormal universe, because I'm going to do a documentary eventually, and then in law enforcement, I'm going to have a network. So this way, if something in the future, I could call Michael. Hey, Michael, it's in your area. I kind of heard this, and it gives you something to look at in that area, right?
Right.
Because I can call it. I do a lot of off podcast interviews, and you hear some special people, but there's those nuggets of information that matter, right? And that's what I look for all the time.
Man, people are fascinated with I never thought, guys, I didn't think people want to listen about on a show for listening to me talk. And I had these guys come from all over the country. We want to talk about this case, that case. You handled so many serial cases. And I said,
well, just any case, like your career. It's good too. It's good to hear from a detective and a police officer about their experiences, because who knows? Someone listens to the show and like, hey, I want to be a cop. So I want to be a detective. You don't know. You might influence somebody. It takes very little for you to have an effect on someone that's positive, Yeah,
I get, you got emails all the time like that, and they're saying, it's too bad what's going on. I know people are, against police and all this kind of stuff. I'm like,
yeah,
people have always been against police. They always they always love the firemen. But we're the first ones there, and we always have to escort the firemen in there. And I was just having this conversation with a fireman, a fire captain the other day. And he goes, thank God for you guys. Otherwise, we wouldn't be going to that neighborhood and stuff. And
it's, you can't, here's the thing with the bad cops thing. It seemed they catch them on video, for some reason, that one cop represents the mass. And so are they catching more bad cops on video? Sure, because video's readily available now. But that's not speaking to all of them. Because if we got all the bad people in general on video, YouTube would they would explode with new uploads. It would never stop. You know what I mean? It's just, that's the truth. You could have bad people working at a restaurant. Yeah, so you can't say cop and associate it with a bad person. Percentages will speak to that. There's going to be a bad person in every group, no matter what it is, I mean,
well, the stuff that's going on with law enforcement these days, society's going to pay, they're starting to pay a heavy price because what certain people wanted, cops aren't doing anything, and they're not going to do anything. They're losing cops, and it was such a great profession before, and guys don't want the job, and we're down, 350 cops over here. And that like it is at all the major police departments. It's just bizarre. And now murder rates are going up. I mean, Portland, Oregon over here. Portland's got like 75 homicides rated this year. And certain places they're just going crazy. And also in some of the little nicer areas that aren't used to getting, they get a homicide every other year or something. Now they're getting like 3-4 a year and stuff. And it's really starting to get. Yeah,
my brother lives in Oregon. He's a psychologist out there. Huh. And I talk to him a lot about, current events going on and whatever. And it's a scary subject because you can see the decline. And as far as there being less cops, that's not a good thing. You know what I mean? It's compared to this. Imagine early man without the fear of the Bible. Because what stopped the guy from killing Jim next door most times? Well, I don't want to go to hell. It's against God. Well, modern times, you need someone to play the buffer between the guy and his neighbor in case they have a dispute. It has to exist.
What were you like as a kid and you're growing up in New York,
Yeah.
And you knew if you got caught by that cop, if you're doing something really, really stupid,
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to do it to him, right? But but now it's like, man, they don't go. They complain to me all the time now. But they walk into the store. I don't know if you guys have an issue down in Florida. They walk in the stores on here. People are loading their bags up with whatever they want to steal.
And just walking out.
Walking right out. And security guards, they do not touch them. They can't,
There's a couple of states where you're not going to see, you're not going to see riots mostly. You're not going to see major break. Two states I can think of right away is Texas and Florida. Because everyone in those two states owns freaking guns. Everyone, right? So to be a criminal in Texas or Florida, you really, really have to vet what you're going to do because you're going to walk into the wrong, especially the high-end neighborhoods. No questions asked. You know what I mean? They're going to fire on you. But when I hear about that nonsense where people just take shit and leave, come on, man.
You should see the stuff that they're doing out here. It's. I mean, they're filling. Like walking. Let's see. Fill their duffel bag up. Walk right out. Right next. I see it happen. Guy's putting stuff in the duffel bag. Looks up at me. He says, "Man, this stuff's really good. You tried?" I said, "Yeah, that's really good." Puts the duffel bag, zips up, walks out the door, and he walks right by the security guard. I go jogging right by the security guard. I go, this guy just boosted a bunch of stuff. Grab the guy. Security guy comes out. Got the guy. Had the guy had a knife, throw the knife or something. And guys, well, all we're supposed to do is just try to get the property back. We're not allowed to do any touch them or arrest them or anything. I said, "You're kidding me, aren't you?" It's all right.
Just to avoid conflict. That's crazy.
And so let the guy go. He takes the food back. Of course, now they got, because this guy just stole the food. His package, they got to throw it out. And I go, and so I go back and get a line. The cop comes back to me later. The security guard, young guy, he got tats on his arm. He run. He said, "I just got out of the military. I'm trying to be a police officer." He goes, "I would love to be the rest of those guys. I see this all the time now, and we're not allowed to do anything."
It's tragic.
They can come in there and they can steal from you, and you cannot do anything. And they fill up their bags and stuff. And sir, you can't do that. I'm going to call the police. And they just keep putting stuff on. They walk out the door.
Here's what people miss out on too, or they're not understanding. Yeah, I get the conflict, but without cops, forget the criminals, right? For 1 second, let's forget about that. Let's think about the children that go missing.
No.
You need an organized group of people like the police that are vetted to do this. They're trained, they understand it. They have a large network where they can help find this child. No. Whereas if you don't have very many cops, a child goes missing, the likelihood of you find a child it's minimizing, because citizens aren't going to communicate on any way or form and put a dragnet up per se. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to do that. They're going to march around streets searching. Like, you need police, period.
Trained, and trained investigators and trained.
Yeah. I mean,
interviewers, interrogators, like me and Cloyd work together. So all years, we've done these hundreds of homicides, and that's what you want. Guys who can, cut the bullshit out and figure out what's going on and get the guy to talk and to clear the guy, because we're going to put something in this guy. How many times every day we're looking at the guy as a suspect? He wasn't a suspect, but he just, because he went and changed his appearance and all that, because he was just,
right.
Just a thug, but he didn't do the damn crime, and but you got to, dealing with the witnesses and stuff, and you got to have guys that are trained and do it all the time. But it takes a heavy toll on you. And we were lucky, we had a family and stuff, and we were able to. We both had over 20 years of homicide, and that was just kind of like that was our job, though. We were trained to do this, and we're lucky we got out unscathed, kind of unscathed. But it was, we were professionals, and that was our job. And we'd see people who got into the job at working in homicide, and they couldn't. It wasn't their ball game. They just I can't do this. This just ain't for me and stuff. And they're not going to that creepy, shitty looking house and going through this stuff. And I said, "What do you mean you're not going to go through this stuff? We got to go process the house." Nah, I ain't going. And okay. That's, they'd rather go work accident investigation or something like that,
Yeah, they want to go for the sexy work.
Yeah, something where it's not hands-on, where it's Monday through Friday, you can put your clothes on.
Yeah, unfortunately, when you're a police officer, you're like at some point, I don't want to phrase this, but you're like a superhero. There's no downtime for a superhero. You know what I mean?
You're getting called out all the time and stuff, and and then the bosses will kind of look at you and say, okay, they just nod at you and let you go do your thing because they know they can't do the job that we've been doing for 20 years and stuff, and go do your thing, and then
I mean, if I can make any suggestion to improve not even relations, just like I understand, some people have been killed by abusive cops. If police were trained, like, especially in modern time, like now, we're aware of it now. If they were trained in, say, jiu-jitsu or some sort of grappling where they can hold someone, where they're not going to, there's ways to hold people just by a wrist where they just can't move, period. Right? Right. And then here's the other thing too. I don't know if you're familiar with this show. There's a show called Future Weapons. You remember that? It's on History Channel some years ago.
Oh, maybe so. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I'm watching this show where they're using sound waves and it's knocking people unconscious. Where is this for police? And if they dare say it's because of budget, think of the favor it's doing the cop or the detective. Imagine you how better would you sleep at night is you had a really aggressive criminal on you and you could just render them unconscious with a sound wave. You know what I mean? It both protects people and it also makes the cop feel better, like because he knows he's not going to permanently injure this person. And I noticed it exists. I saw it on this show, and I remember thinking, like, where is you're talking? What is that show? Let's see. It's a 2008. Talking 15 years ago. Where is this? Yeah, where's this technology? I know it exists now. It's on the show 15 years later. It should have been readily available. One would think anyway, right? So,
yeah.
I don't know. For you,
I got to get going. I just got texted.
Yeah. Go ahead, Michael. My bad. We'll talk. No. We'll
Adam,
talk again.
Pleasure talking with you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, indeed. I know. We went way over the time. I didn't even notice that.
That's okay. Nor did I. Then I looked at my thing. My thing is big. But you pick up your daughter. And I got 5 minutes ago. What time is it? I couldn't believe what time it is.
Yeah, Michael.
It's got to be 8 o'clock your time, isn't it?
Yeah, just thereafter. I didn't realize that. Wow, we went for a minute here. All right, so what I'll do is I'll get in touch with you. I'll note the book, and then we'll talk again real soon.
Thanks a lot, man. It was nice talking with you, Adam.
You too, Michael. Have a great night, sir.
Cheers.
Take care.